Well, greetings, Titans. Welcome to the big picture. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. We reveal if my viewers' calls for government price capping or fixing on EV public charging is a way forward. Well, spoiler alert, no, price fixing is not the way forward, as there are much easier and quicker methods already in place that we're not using. Well, we really need to go back to the early days, and Tesla, when they launched onto the scene, fully understood that plentiful, reliable and cheap public charging was vital to EV adoption. People weren't going to buy EVs if you could only use them for going to the shop. They were needed for road trips. Other manufacturers at the time, things like Nissan Leaf, Renault Zoe, BMW i3, they didn't see public charging as anything to do with them. It wasn't their responsibility. They were happy to leave it to other third parties. Now, the third-party EV chargers, they saw that this was a unique selling point for Tesla, and they actually thought and believed that Tesla would never open them up to anyone else. It was the whole reason why people were buying Teslas. So they saw Tesla chargers remaining exclusive, and they saw an opportunity to turn EV public charging into a profit centre, not a service. So right from the start, Tesla saw this as a service. The third-party EV chargers saw this purely as a profit-making business. And it's turned out that Tesla has done both. They not only provide it as a service, they also have made it a profit centre in its own right. But that was then. So the third-party chargers arrived on the scene, and they set the price as high as they thought the market could stand. They were not providing a service. This was a pure business. It was meant to make a profit, and they set it high. And for whatever reason, 79p or 79 euros or 79 cents turned out to be the figure that they picked. Well, shortly after this, once they started installing these chargers, the governments got involved. So the government started pouring money into this. They thought the easiest way of doing this was not to leave it up to third parties like Tesla, but to actually promote the installation of EVs, because everybody knew that the biggest stumbling block to buying your first EV was range. So big money arrived from governments around the world, and it was loads of money. But unfortunately, they didn't understand the predatory nature of modern finance, and so there was very little control or accountability. There was nothing put in there to say these had to work. There was nothing put in there to say that these had to be maintained or serviced or even repaired or replaced if they failed. So there was a mad scramble just to get chargers installed. That, to some extent, is still going on. But then very shortly afterwards, the private investment banks and the funds took over. They also saw this as a massive profit opportunity. They monetised EV public charging purely as a profit generator, not as a service. If they could make money out of it, it was something they wanted to be on. And the private investment banks and funds, they took over totally, and they then started selling these on. So an investment bank was looking for a good investment. They decided to get involved in investing in green technology, renewable energy, for example. And then they would invest in that industry, give them money to expand or grow the business. And then the investment banks and funds would start selling their own funds. This is their latest green fund or renewable fund or whatever it was they decided to sell it. And they would sell that on as a pure investment to investors who they discovered were turning more and more green. So all of a sudden, this was no longer charging. This was just a way of making money. And some of that money was actually provided by the government. This was an absolute win-win for the private investment banks, the pension funds, all of the private equity companies, everyone involved in the finance. They were just taking money off the government and handing it out to the private and corporate investors. And all of the investors, the governments, the private equity companies, the pension funds, all relied on Tesla retaining their charger network, which by then was easily the best in the world, as exclusive to Tesla's. They never saw Tesla relinquishing that, because they believed that this, from a financial point of view, was the best thing Tesla had. It was the one thing that made people buy Teslas. You got automatic access to a really extensive, reliable, cheap and fast charging network. And those in the money business believed that Tesla would never give those up. Now, to see the folly in that, you only need to go back to Tesla's original mission statement, which was to speed up the transformation of the transport industry into renewable energy. And so this was not a profit centre for Tesla. It turned out to be, but that was not the target. The target was to provide the service and make it easier for people to buy EVs in the first place, because there was no restriction on using them for road trips. And the private funds and investors and governments didn't understand this. They really do look at everything from a pure profit point of view. And they saw that Tesla would never give this up. Well, Tesla saw exactly the opposite. They suddenly saw, hey, if we actually give up our exclusive selling point, unique selling point, then we're still going to sell Teslas, because they are now recognised as the best cars in the world at the price range they are. We will upset some of our Tesla drivers, certainly, but it will give us an awful lot more money to be able to invest into expanding that charger network. And so they did a pros and cons, and they came out on the side of, it's actually better for us and better for the adoption of EVs to open this up to everyone. But even once that decision was made, people in the money did not see this as a big issue. There was nothing really groundbreaking in it. They were never going to open them all up. A lot of cars couldn't charge at Tesla chargers. Maybe a few could. This was not really going to affect the core business. So they carried on investing money into EV public charging around the world. And unfortunately, nobody was aware of the speed at which Tesla works. And they decided, let's go for it big time. And in just a couple of years, it's now most of the Tesla charger network is open to all, and an awful lot of people are using it. And that left the money men with a bit of a dilemma. They had invested money on the basis that they could charge 79.80p per kilowatt hour for public charging, while Tesla was selling at 30 or 40p, which they still made a profit at. So even once Tesla did start opening up their supercharger network to non-Tesla owners, to any vehicle which has CCS2 socket, the private investors were still not aware of the impact this was about to have. Now, I've been reporting this ever since the channel started, that Tesla was charging 30, 40, 50p per kilowatt hour. BP, Shell were charging 85 pence a kilowatt hour, and most of the others most of the private ones headed up towards the 79 or 85p. And I was predicting that if and when Tesla opened up, and I believe they would, that they would become a bigger and bigger and bigger part of the charging scene. They would get all the extra money. They would expand the charging network at a much faster pace than anyone else. And they would be grabbing more and more of the business. Private equity didn't see this at all. They still thought it was a tiny little part, Tesla exclusive, does it really matter? And they relied on being able to make the 79p or 85p. And then in the early days, Tesla was, I suppose doing the gentlemanly thing where if they were operating alongside someone like Gridserve or Osprey or someone, they didn't actually open those up as a priority to anyone, because that would be direct competition. So in the early days of this opening up of the charger network, Tesla was, they were quite keen to make it a bit gentle, a bit non-reactive to the establishment, the Gridserves, the Ospreys, the Instavolts, the BP Pulse. And so they would open up ones that were a little bit remote and had a bit of spare capacity. But gradually it came to a point, once again I predicted this in very early videos that I did over a year ago, I predicted that sooner or later they're going to be opening them up alongside brand new competitors, Gridserves and Ospreys and Instavolts. And when that happens, the 79p will suddenly become unsustainable. Not overnight, but suddenly in business terms. So gradually the non-Tesla EV charging networks are suddenly finding nobody's using them anymore. And I've been predicting for a long time they have no option other than to drop the prices dramatically. We saw this first one to break was Gridserve, 20% off this summer for a 3-month period. My own personal thought is they'll extend this afterwards, because if they suddenly go back from no 20%, back to no 20% after the summer, people are just going to stop using them. So I believe this is here to stay. Osprey came in really half-hearted. They gave a 5% discount for 4 days. I think it's from Monday to Thursday, one particular. Absolutely pathetic. And now we've just had the big one. And now Instavolt has just totally buckled as well. And they've introduced a seemingly endless, there's no date set on it, from the 1st of September. They will be offering an overnight rate between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. of 54p, which is a massive discount. So for Instavolt customers now, what's going to happen? It's fairly obvious what's going to happen is everybody's going to stop using Instavolt during the day and use it at night. And that's going to really upset their investment plans, because it's just going to take away those people who in the right mind would still use Instavolt at 85p, knowing that if you wait a little bit later, just before you go to bed, nip out, charge it up, it's best part of half price. So that one's not going to work. So what we're going to find very quickly is that these companies, the Gridserves, the Ospreys, the Instavolts, who are already backing down and dropping prices, are going to find that where the prices are low, they get more business, and where the prices are at the normal 79 or 85p, they're just not getting any business at all. And that puts them into a dilemma of what they are going to do. So as I said at the very beginning, the way around this is really, it's already out there. It's a very, very simple method. So these customers, the supermarkets, the dedicated chargers like Gridserve and Osprey, and the bigger ones like BP and Shell, they are very, very, very responsive to customer pressure. So the answer to all of this is really simple. You don't need government legislation. That would kill the industry totally. You don't need price caps or anything. What you need is for everyone, even if you are a business user, you have a business lease, and you get your charging paid for by the company. If everyone deliberately, for a short period of time, heads only to the cheaper chargers, or to the chargers at the cheaper rate, in the case of Instavolt, then what you will find is they will lose so much business that they have to respond. For example, Gridserve, they've received £500 million from investment money, and they have to produce a return, a profit from that. And if nobody's using the chargers because they're sticking at 79p, there's no return for the investors. They have to do it because they've taken the money. So what will happen is Gridserve now is committed to doing anything at all to try and keep that investment going, that return on the money they've received. And so you're going to see, in my opinion, the discounting carrying on, the 20% off carrying on. So the answer to all of this is purely customer pressure. It's customer demand, and we don't use it enough. We have total power at our fingertips or feet. All we need to do, stop using anything at 79, 80p, 85p or above. Just stop it. Don't ever use them under any circumstances whatsoever, even if you're a business driver and the company pays. Have a think about the business and about what you're doing. And also the fact that if you have a company car, most people will use that company car for private use, and you would then be encouraging them to keep their prices high. So search out the Tesla superchargers which are open to all. Search out, even if you go a few mile extra, search out those that offer overnight charging at a reduced rate or fixed periods, or use the app and get a discount. Search them out actively and just make sure you use them. So the answer to the problem, it's don't rely on the government. Just go and search for all the cheaper chargers. Even if you've got to go a few mile out the way, go and search for the cheaper chargers. If there's a supermarket nearby that's ripping you off, don't use it, just go somewhere else. What they will find is they will monitor this, and if they are beholden to others for a return on those charges, they will have to adjust the prices. It's really simple. It's not new. I've said this on many occasions. No government invention, no government price caps or fixes. Let's use our feet, our customer power. Let's go out there and actually tell the EV chargers which chargers we want them to operate and how much we want them to charge. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please click the like button. Leave a comment down below if you disagree. And please subscribe. It's so important to us as a young channel. Every subscriber counts. A lot of you aren't subscribed, and we know you watch regularly. So if you are one of those, just please just subscribe. Click of a button, doesn't cost anything, but it makes a lot of difference to us. So thanks for watching. I'm Dave.